Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Happy to be back with you after my little trip to the coast with a bunch of 12-year-olds. It was a lot of fun, but I have to say, I did not realize how busy it was going to be keeping track of 50 12-year-olds. I got a chance to do one painting, and this is it. We walked down to the water's edge, and this is in Winter Harbor over at Acadia National Park in Maine. And I sat in the rocks, I started this painting, and then I finished it using a photo I took on my phone later on during the trip when there was downtime for the kids. So it was a busy trip. I was glad I got a chance to go. It was fun to learn about the geology of the area and where the rocks and minerals and stuff came from. As a painter, it was very interesting just to hear about these different minerals, and of course it was just wonderful to see the sites. Oh, before I get too far into this, I want to let you know, because some of you guys don't follow me on my blog, I actually have 2 projects on my blog over the last week that are not on the YouTube channel, and free giveaways. So if you want a chance to win a really cool adult coloring book or a DIY ceramic Christmas tree, head on over to my blog, links in the video description, sign up to win. All you gotta do is comment on my blog to win, and you may be the lucky winner. But I wanted to make sure you guys didn't miss out on that, because most of my projects have a video, but not all of them do, and sometimes there are little blog only giveaways and gems over there that I don't want you to miss out on. So we are going to do a painting today. I'm going to use the same paints and pencils that I used on this. I used my Mission Gold paints, the Perfect palette here of 24, I believe. I really like this palette, but I have to tell you the pitfalls of taking this out. This is really large. It's really bigger than what I like to have out on me with me if I'm not someplace flat. I was like sitting on a rock, and it was very slanted, and it was hard to keep all this under control. And then since I used the palette for storage, I had to find a place to put all of this stuff so I could actually mix my palette. So it was kind of cumbersome. And I love these paints and I love this palette, but I think that it's just too big for plein air painting if I'm not sure if I'm going to have like a nice flat stable area to sit and work at. So I just wanted to let you know that in case you're thinking about taking this out on a trip. I find it's a beautiful palette. It's just really big for plein air work. So what I'm going to do is just remove this top sheet here, and we're going to sketch. And I did bring my Graphitin pencils with me to sketch. I'm just going to pull up my reference photo on my computer here, and I'm going to sketch in. I'm going to start with kind of like this dark indigo, just mostly so you can see it. You don't have to do anything this dark, but I like these Graphitin pencils by Derwent. I know I say it wrong because I'm an American. I use the American pronunciation. Derwent. I don't know. It sounds about the same to me either way. But that's it. But you know who it's by now, right? So I'm getting my horizon line in there about a third of the way down the paper. Trying to keep it relatively straight. I'm gonna sketch in a little bit of a island out in the background there with lots of islands. It was interesting to learn how they were created with volcanoes and glaciers and whatnot. I'm going to get this a little mass of trees and rocks over here, so I'm going to slant this back here and just, okay, we've got rocks on the bottom, and then we're going to have some trees coming up, but I don't want to put too much in there because I'm going to paint that. I have no idea how long this is going to take. I painted it in 2 stints, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how long it takes. I feel like I want to extend maybe this down a little bit more. There we go. This is just a rough sketch, guys. And in fact, if you don't want to sketch first, you don't have to. I want to pull a little island, or not really, just kind of like a little finger. You're in all these like little fingery areas. This was on Schoodic Point, and there's all these little, and the tide was out, it was kind of low tide, and there's all these tidal pools. So it's a very interesting place to paint, and I want to go back. I found out this area is open to the public. It's not just for research, and I want to go back sometime, maybe with a couple of painting friends or something, and do some painting. Now it's low tide, so we have these tidal areas. So what I'm going to do is just kind of sketch out my water area here, because all kinds of little pebbles and stones. So we're getting that water. This would be the water here, okay? And then I'm going to put this other tidal pool down here, kind of going off my paper and in through here. Then I've got a couple boulders, and I'm going to sketch over here. I'm telling you, it's really nice if you get a chance to go out and sketch on location, paint on location, because even though I have a photograph here, I'm remembering a lot of the things that I saw. You really build your memory too. Don't rely on your photos when you go out to paint. Paint as much as you can. Really observe what you have. There's all these like really big granite boulders everywhere. It's just a really geologically interesting area, and an artistically beautiful area to paint. I'm going to pull this down a little bit lower still because I felt like I didn't have enough room to do my rocks earlier. And okay, I think I've got enough here for my my basic sketch. Okay, and these graphite tint pencils are really nice. I think you could do the whole thing in the pencil if you wanted to, because the colors are just so muted and beautiful and perfect for this type of scenery. But I actually like to kick the colors up a little bit. It was very gray when we were there, very overcast. It rained during our during some of our programs, but it was all right. We made the best of it. Everyone's prepared. We're all from Maine, so we know what to expect. I'm just wetting the sky here. And I'm going to grab a little Pression blue. And what I did actually, because the colors are so transparent in the Mission Gold line, I had to swatch them out, and I'm just kind of keeping them off camera so I can make sure, because they kind of all look, a lot of them look black in there because they're so transparent. I know some people are not in love with the Mission Gold paints, but I really like them. Haven't had a chance to use them that much. That's why I brought them on this trip, because I knew it would force me to use them if it's all I had. Now I'm doing this kind of patchy fill-in because I want it to kind of look like there are some kind of mist and wispy clouds. So I'm really not gonna put a lot of time into that sky. Maybe just a touch more over here because it's hardly noticeable. If there's one thing I noticed about my painting that I did on location is that, and probably because I didn't have very much time. We were only there for probably about 15 minutes, because by the time we hiked there, we hiked all those kids over there and got settled in. It was just, you just don't have very much time. Oops, that's too dark. I'm using that same Pression blue, and I'm going to add some of that into my water here, the tide pool area. I don't want it to too dark though, so I'm just kind of picking up what I already have and spreading it around. I'm gonna add lots of water. The thing with these paints that I notice is that you do not need a lot. I mean, just a little touch and it goes so far. On the other hand, I'm a little afraid of thinning it out so much, because I have heard that the paints are not as light fast in light washes, so I guess I'll just have to, their ratings are really good. I guess I'll just have to see how how the paintings hold up. I'm also going to go in and pull some of that color up into that mountain back there, because I have too much color on my brush, and rather than waste it, I'll just pull it right up into that mountainy area. Okay, now I think I'm going to work on my I think I do want to dull that down a little bit, so I'm going to take some Pression blue. Let me move my palette over so you can see. And I'm going to use, let's see, oh, I got to flip my little thing around because I've got I want to see what colors I have there. I'm going to use a little burnt sienna. Their burnt sienna is a little gold, so it might turn a little green. Yes, it does. It turns a little green. Is that the burnt sienna? Yep. See how green that is? It's a very gold burnt sienna. It makes a beautiful green though. Would you look at that? It's actually really pretty. It's a really pretty green. Looks like a nice sap green or something. So let me grab a little bit of this red to brown it down a little bit. Add a little more blue. See what I'm telling you about that? Just a touch, very, very light touch with the colors. I want to get some of this color into this mountain back there. Just dull it down a little bit. And I'm going to grab a rag because I feel like I'm just getting way too much paint here. I don't care if the edges are fuzzy back there because it's further away, and it would be totally fine for it to be kind of fuzzy. And you could really, there was one point where we were hiking the Sundew Trail, if you're familiar with the area, and looking out, and you could see Cadillac Mountain, but you could see 3 mountains actually kind of lined up, and each mountain had its own distinct hue, like or value, how dark or light it was, but also it has its own distinct color, which I thought was really interesting, depending on what sort of surface it has, whether it was all granite or if it was evergreen trees or what. So it was really just a really interesting time. I'm gonna go in and wash this out because I decided to change the shape and the position of those rocks. I'm gonna grab a little yellow ochre. I want to get this. I want to get everything on screen. I think maybe I can. There we go. A little yellow ochre in there, and you can see how bright that is. So we're going to be doing some mixing here. I'm going to grab that brown I just mixed for that mountain in the back, get some of that in there. I want some of the red. Add lots of water to that. Just kind of toning some pink granite. That's what the rocks are. A lot of the rocks are this pink granite. I hope the kids retained a lot of what they learned. It was funny, we were talking about what our favorite things were, and the kids loved the night hikes. You know, we were all hiking pitch black, and you have to, you know, rely on your own night vision. They loved that. I was thinking, oh, I love the geology walk, and they're like, really? That was so boring. Well, not boring, I mean, but it was definitely not their favorite. But I'm so glad our school does that. It's such a unique program. And since this area here is not next to anything wet, I'm going to go ahead and paint some of these rocks as well. Just keeping it really rough. We'll go in and add more details later. I just want these kind of chunks of value. I missed not having a live show last week, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be having a live show this week because Veterans Day. I thought I might do a live show yesterday, but oh gosh, I was still tired. I'm telling you what, that's tiring, tiring to recover from one of those. I'm going to go on a little more blue and do a little red into that, tone it down. Very intense colors here. And I want these rocks in the foreground to be a little bit bolder. Boulder, get it? Rocks and boulder. So that they kind of pull your eye forward a bit. And I'm going to let that dry before I go glazing over any other colors. So now I think I'm going to get the, there's all these little stones, little pebbles and rocks in through here and around the tide pools, and I am going to just kind of be dabbing in different earthy tones. So I'm going to start off with my purple that I mixed with the it's like a cad red and Pression blue, so it's got just it's a slightly purpley gray, and I'm just going to tap in some of my darker rocks, darker values. Tap, tap. Much darker. It's much darker probably because they're wet, because the tide is rolling in. It's a lot darker than the granite that you see underneath the pine trees over here and up here at the beginning. Let's get these patches of color. And I just want some texture. That's why I'm dabbing, because it's rough. It's rocks. So I want it to look rough. And we'll do some of this down here. We can have boulder. There we go again. I love my puns. Boulders over here. Not as big as those boulders. Not as bold as those boulders. Less bold boulders. I have to say, it's getting chilly in the downstairs studio. I've been eyeballing my office upstairs, thinking about how I'm going to arrange it. I do it slightly different every year. I improve a little bit each year. I've only been working upstairs for the past 2 years in the winter, but I just kind of, it just got too cold, the basement for me. So, just been thinking about how I want to arrange up there to make best use of my space. And I think I'll be up there by Christmas. I usually try to wait till January to move the operation upstairs, but getting awfully spleeny in my old age. Since there's a lot of moss, I think I'm going to take advantage of that color that I mixed. It was the burnt sienna, because the burnt sienna and the mission gold is kind of funny. We'll mix it together again. I really want to show you this. It's really funny. So this is the burnt sienna It looks like burnt sienna on its own, doesn't it? It looks like, oh, that's burnt sienna. It's a reddish brown. But then when I mix the phthalo blue, it just gets to this mossy green color. So I'm dabbing some of this in. It looks a little browner next to the purple, because there's all this like seaweed and algae kind of on the rocks. So I think it's nice to get those colors in there. Plus, it was kind of a dreary... You know what I'll do? When I post this video on my blog, another reason to follow my blog besides the giveaways, which are super cool, I will post my photo, which I'm going to just warn you right now, I'm not a great photographer. That's why I love Paint My Photo and websites like that in graphic stock, because I am not a good photographer, but I will post my photo so you can kind of see the local color. It is much more drab. But I like to kick up the intensity a bit. But if you don't want to, you totally can go with a more muted palette. It just comes down to personal preference. And when I dab that green in on some of the purpley colors, that gold, I think it's... I'll have to look and see what colors they use for their burnt sienna, because I think there must be some sort of like quinacridone gold in it or something. Apologies for the furnace. We're just going to keep on working through, because otherwise this is going to dry on me. Because so the gold in there is really neutralizing the purple in my rocks and giving me some really nice, interesting neutrals. I also like it, and grabbing some yellow ochre there, I also like it getting a little warmer here in the foreground, just because it's giving us that, that kind of bringing our eyes forward. I'm going to crinkle up my paper towel and give it a little texture here. I think I'll only do that in the foreground though, because I really just want that to shine, to really show off. And plus sometimes when you lift it, you get an interesting, it lifts back to an interesting color. You'd be surprised at kind of what you get when you lift off some colors as they settle in sediment, and as some colors stain and some colors rise. It's kind of interesting. Okay, I want a little more blue in this area, so I'm just grabbing a little blue, mixing it in with what I have on my palette already, because I don't want to go anything too raw right now. So that made like a more cool gray. You can see I'm tapping that in. I'm totally fine with blossoms and blooms happening here, because it's going to give me some nice texture. And you know, you always see like barnacles and things on rock, so if you do end up with tiny little blooms or anything, it's going to look authentic. I'm going to tap it in there, let it do its thing. I love to see when the colors mix and separate. You get some really pretty surprises, and I think that's what I really like about watercolor, is how you can let the paint do its thing. I thought it'd be really fun. The kids get these journaled, or they used to have Maine Studies journals where they would journal their trip, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if they had like those comic book sketchbooks that have the room for a story and a room for an illustration, because I mean, I can see those kids just going crazy, making some cool sketches and whatnot. Adding in some darker colors here. Really embrace the dirty brush, okay? You want dirty brush a lot here, because the colors, especially with this line of paint, are so intense. But you don't have to run out and get this paint. Do it with whatever you have. There's nothing magical about this paint. It's nice paint. I like it, but any paint you have is going to work. Crayola will work. I want you to use what you have. I want you to feel good about what you create. So it's you're the artist. I'm cleaning my palette now. I'm cleaning up all the sludge and adding rocks in with that sludge. It's not really muddy though. You see that? It's really staying quite bright. I am dabbing some little shapes into the water area, into the reflected. The water's really light because it's reflecting the sky. The sky is really overcast and light. We will get some true reflections going back here, but we're just not there yet. And I don't want such a hard contrast between the where we have this solid mass of rocks and then the water. So that's why I'm dabbing in some little pebbles and stones. Okay, now let's I did use the green gold in the original picture, so why don't we grab some of that? That's this right here. Another thing I wanted to mention about this palette, because when you close it, this goes onto the opposite side. So you'll have one strip of paint here and one strip of paint here. Things can get stuck to the pans and to the paint, and I found that with like a pen that I had in there. Why did I put that there? That doesn't go there. And I just splattered it. So I did have a pen kind of get stuck in some of the wet paint, and I had to wipe, like kind of wash the pen, so it wasted some paint there. So so I don't think I really like keeping my supplies in here, except maybe I would do one brush down the middle or something, because I just feel like it is too much of a chance of it getting stuck to the paint, and then you have to waste paper towels cleaning it or waste the paint because you're throwing the paint away. I'm starting these trees brighter than I'm going to want them because I'm going to do a wet and wet technique here. So I am kind of dragging up some trunks, and then I am wiggle-wagging my brush across. And we're still using that number 8, it's number 12 round. Great size brush. I was just watching a video. Another great watercolorist, Steve Mitchell, Mind of Watercolor. He was saying how number 8 round is his favorite brush. It's a great size. And depending on the manufacturer, a number 8 round could be about this size. This is number 12 round from the Mimik. Oh my gosh, that furnace is going again. From the Mimik line over at Jerry's Artorama. I really love the Mimik squirrels. I don't recommend them for beginners just because they tend to be a little too juicy for, you know, if you're not used to that much paint. So now I'm going in a little more Pression blue in my mix. But once you get the hang of how wet watercolors are and you have good control, I would definitely recommend grabbing a couple because they're very affordable, and most importantly, they perform really well and no animals are harmed in the making of them. But whatever brush you choose, take care of it, because with watercolor is such a benign medium that your brushes should last you maybe a lifetime if you take care of them. I still have my first watercolor brushes I got when I was 7, my first real nice watercolor brushes. I'm gonna grab a little bit of the I think it's a Cad Red medium or Cad Red deep. See that right there? You could use a Pyrrole Scarlet, whatever you have that's kind of a slightly warmer. See how strong? It's really strong though. I'm gonna have to add more blue and green to that. So again, going to more Pression blue and more of the green gold. With this, you don't have to worry about adding too much water with these because they're such strong paints, but with a lot of brands, especially if you're starting out and you're using like maybe a Cotman or another student grade, you might end up with a really too much water and just not muddy, but just too pastel of mixes. So just to keep that in mind. Add some of this in here, down here towards the bottom where it would be darker. Let the colors flow. Because that red, when you put that in there, red is the opposite of green, and it negates the color, it makes it neutral. Having a lot of fun painting this. I hope you are. And I have this really wet, so we're going to have some interesting, I can already see some interesting kind of granulation happening and just some cool textures happening in this mass of trees. Because when things are this far away, like I'm looking at my photo blown up on my computer, I can't see that much detail. When I was sitting out there, I really couldn't see much detail way out there. So I was kind of making up a lot of stuff, or just kind of putting it in very loosely because I couldn't see really what was going on perfectly. I feel like I want a little more blue in there. I am going to blot my brush off because it's really wet. And add a little bit of that in there and let it do its thing. If you were doing this in the winter and it was snowing, you could put salt in there at this time. So now what I think I'm going to do is use my credit card scraper. I can use the rounded edge because this is an edge of a credit card, so it's got the rounded edge, and sometimes I can scrape out the lighter chunks, see, like that. And then if I go in with the, I can drag up some treetops too. If I go in with a sharp point, it'll give me darker lines. So you can kind of use that. So if you're using a curved edge or like the back of a beveled edge brush, you'll scrape paint away typically and give you a lighter line. And if, I just want to bring that up so you can see, and if you are, if you're using the rounded edge scrapes away and the sharper edge kind of digs into the paper. I'm just going to blot a little bit because I have a really big puddle there. And I don't want it to I don't want it to look black or anything when I'm done. I want it to have some color. So this might show up a little bit better for you. I hope. Hard to tell on my little monitor there. So with some of those darker colors, I'm going to rinse my brush because I think I got it into a color I haven't been using when I set it down there. I'm going to use the darker, browner, duller mix. I did add a smidgen of blue to it. I'm going to use that for these trees way back here. Okay, they're tiny. All they are just little wiggles on the paper. Actually, I think I'll put the bottom of my tree line down like a bead of color, so it's not going to dry on me and give me a weird, funky line. Put that bead of color down. And actually, what I think I'm going to do, because this brush is a little big, I'm going to finally switch to a smaller brush. Where'd my dagger go? I brought my little Neptune dagger on the trip, so I just wet it to point it, and I'll just drag up my trees there. So we want this kind of dull over here because having that dull is going to make our other things come forward. I'm trying to get in the habit of painting with this dagger more, especially for plein air. I really hope that furnace isn't annoying. Push that up there. Not any more annoying than me pulling my picture out of frame, right? Because I just feel like it has a lot of versatility, and there's a plein air artist who I follow on Instagram. Her name is Liz Steele. She has books out, Urban Sketcher, and she uses dagger a lot, and she's very proficient at it, and I just think it's such a useful tool, especially since you can get such a variety of widths, which you can with a pointed round brush. But I think for like foliage and things, because it's got a tendency to be really random, you can get some really fun effects there. So now we're coming down a little bit lower in the paper, so our trees are going to be a little bit higher. I'm not sure if I want to attempt them yet, because anything I paint really wet's going to flow into those trees, so I think I'm going to skip to a different part. I think I'll glaze over on some of these rocks here. Let's see if I can get a nice gray with whatever I have just hanging out in my palette. This is very green, so I think I'm just going to get a smidgen of red, smidgen of blue. Try to limit your palette. Even though I have all these colors here, I'm not using them all together. A little yellow ochre because I want to warm it up. The Mission Gold pans are liquid poured, so there's no reason you can't use your liquid Mission Gold paint to make your own palette. I mean, don't feel like you have to go buy this. It's the same exact paint. They've even said so. The company says so. But what they do is they paint it. They pour the pans. This is not going to work good for a wash. They pour the pans, and then they let it shrink, and then they pour it again, let it shrink. I think they do this 5 times to ensure that every pan is full. But you'll also find the paint and the pans are very hard. They're not sticky unless you have it wet and you close it up and a brush is rusting right in that wet paint, then yeah, it's going to stick. But they're not a really sticky paint, but I do feel like they're slow wearing, at least in what I have used them. I haven't really made a dent. The only dent is where something is stuck to the paint and it rips them out of there. But if you are filling your pans, that's a good tip. You can fill it, let it shrink, fill it, let it shrink, fill it, let it shrink, and then it's going to last you a lot longer than if you just fill it once. You are putting more paint in there, that's why it's lasting you longer. It's not like some magic trick that's happening. And I'm blotting to give it a little more texture. I will go in and put more shadows in those later, but right now I just wanted to get that down there. Okay, I am going to go back to my little dagger here because I think it'll be really fun to do some work with that. Again, Pression blue. Going in with my red here. I should have labeled my colors because but you know what? It's like a cad red deep or a scarlet or a pyrrole red. You can use any of those. It doesn't have to be that exact color. And I'm going to go in here, and even though that's wet, I'm going to paint in some of the big splits in the rock. Because what happens, and this is some science, see, I'm like a what do you call that? Common Core? I don't know. It's one of those teachers that mixes the things from the different classes. I don't know. But, you know, because, like, there'll be a little crack in the rock and the water falls down it because we're Maine and it freezes. And then it freezes. And then that frozen ice pops it apart a little bit more. So over the millennia, all these little tiny little cracks get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you have these really cool cracks, and then boulders actually fall down. They have to go and remove boulders from the roads before they open the roads up to the public in the spring every year. It's really something. It's really interesting, and it's fun to learn about the places you're from. If you get a chance to do that, vacation in your own area, go see what's happening in your own backyard. Especially as a painter, it's very worthwhile and interesting. And plus, it's, you know, if you can drive there, it's practically free for the taking, for the watching, for the looking. Now that it's going to dry, when it's not wet, it's going to look a little bit duller. So I know it looks really dark right now. Try not to worry about that. Now this isn't going to be that great for pebbles. I'm going to go back to my other brush and just kind of tap in some of pebbles in that dark color, just so that I have kind of something to marry that really dark color with all the other rocks that I have going around here. I don't want a lot of definition way back here because you're not gonna, you wouldn't be able to see the definition that far away. But the cracks in the rocks are really bold, so you can see those. I could see those from where I was sitting. I was sitting on some of these big boulders here, just a little bit like over here. Okay, and I think that really makes that start to come alive. Now we can go over here and work again on those trees. I am going to go with the round, number 12 round. And I want a little bit brighter of a mix. So I'm going to start off with my green gold. Isn't that a beautiful color? I just love that color. It's so pretty. So some of the colors in this kit are mixed. I bought the 24 pure pigment colors so I could mix whatever I wanted, just for more versatility. Some of these are mixes. I don't, off the top of my head, know which ones, but I'll grab a little Sprint Sienna. Earthy it up a little bit. That's pretty. Maybe grab a little of my dark color there. So I just wanted to let you know that you will be getting some mixes if you get this set. What happened was I bought the pure pigment set of 24 after much deliberation, and because a lot of you guys wanted it reviewed, and I signed up for a free sample on their website, but I never got it. So I'm like, I'm gonna buy something, and I was gonna get the one that a lot of people go for, the less expensive. It's like a set of, I think it's like 36 colors, 5 milliliter tubes with a palette, and that's what I was gonna get, but I decided against it because of all the mixes in that color, and I thought, well, I'd rather have fewer tubes that were bigger, so I would have that versatility of mixing. So that's what I went with. And I'm just going to kind of wiggle my brush back and forth to get some of the pine tree tops a little bit. I just don't want a bunch of grasses, like big weird dinosaur grasses growing up there. I want to have actual trees. So I'm going back and forth. Very relaxing. Actually, I felt like when we got and we're painting and I was on location, I felt like I was only there like 5 minutes and we had to pack up. Maybe it was longer. Maybe I was just in my like art zen state. Probably, because I have no idea how long we've been painting here today. And I'm gonna mix in a little red and a little more blue, darken that up. You'll have to make sure, or I'm going to have to make sure, that any of the colors that I've used, that I've wiped a damp brush over at the end, because the colors are so transparent that I might have some, you know, mucky film on the top, because I often don't rinse my brush between colors. I recommend beginners do that, but eventually you're going to figure out how much you can do. How wet your brush is, how much you can reach into another color without contaminating it. It's just something that comes with practice. And for a little spark of color, I think I want a little bit of the red. Just kind of, I just want to make sure I don't have a big glob of it, but I think I want to throw in a little bit of that. Sometimes the evergreens die and you get these orange leaves on them too. But it's also fun to kind of brighten things up a little bit there. I am going to do the same scraping that I did before with I'll do the blunt edge for light colors, whoops, and the sharp edge for, holy moly. My block, this is an older block, I gotta blot some of that out, and it's not affixed to the backing anymore, so I've got some sliding going on. So with that blunt edge, I can pull out some lighter, get some little saplings over here, there. Pull up some lighter branches, and then I can do the darker ones with a sharp edge. And as the paint settles in, they'll get darker. But don't try to control it too much. It's really kind of a random thing. Let it do its thing. And I also will be able to see some cracks in those rocks, so I want to go ahead and get those in there. And I seem to have enough mud on my palette that I can muster up a gray. And I'm just getting these little cracks in the rocks here. I got some pictures of Pretty Cove that we saw that I want to paint as well. Maybe during a live show. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll do it in acrylics. I have a lot of people asking for acrylics. I don't typically work in acrylics that much, but I might do that one in acrylics. It might be kind of fun to do in acrylics. There. And again, I'm going to go with my round brush and that same dark color and kind of bridge the gap between that those cracks in the pebbles on the tide pool, around the tide pools. So I am blotting my brush and picking up some of my muck. I love this because I don't feel like I waste any paint on this painting, because it's like I'm always just going back in and adding to the muck. Or picking up using the muck, I should say, not adding to the muck, because I don't think the painting is mucky. I think the painting is quite vibrant. I'm gonna dab. Leave some of that color that we painted underneath showing, though. You don't want to cover that all up. That's pretty. Can bring some of that down here a little bit. There's bigger dabs as you get closer to the foreground because you want to have that scale. Okay, so we do have some trees reflecting way back there. So I want to grab some of this murky gray green, and I think I'm just gonna do like a little bead of color here. I feel like I need a smidgen more blue in that. A little more murkiness. And we're gonna just get that bead of color. Oops, hang on a second. It was a friendly call to remind me to go vote. I've already done that, so thank you very much. And I'm just gonna drag this down here, right into the water. I know it's a little scary when you've got really still water and you're dragging that in there, because it's not like you can really remove it all if you make a mistake, but remember, this is going to look brighter because it's wet. You can leave it just as it is, but if that's freaking you out a little bit, it won't hurt for it to be a little lighter. So what you can do is just gently blot. And that should kind of even out a little bit. Because it's okay if your reflection's a little bit fainter, especially if it's freaking you out. And I'm going to grab a little bit of a darker color. I'm doing a little bit of that red with some of this murky color here. I need a little smidgen of blue. And we're going to give these trees a little bit of a shadow or roots or something, because it's just too bright back there. I don't want a lot of detail back here. Wouldn't really see it. I might leave this. It kind of looks like it's misty over there, so I think I might kind of leave that like that. I don't know. I feel like I want to bring that out a little bit. Maybe blot that. It's a little dark. Just all these little bits of stones and stuff peeking through. But that island is pretty far away, so that's alright if that's a little misty, I think. And I've got a little pencil I can see showing through. And then if you do want to add any other little islandy areas, you probably want a nice neutral color to do that with. So I'm just gonna jump out. We want this stuff to be very muted. Don't be afraid of water. Oops, I dropped some water though. That's kind of what I should be afraid of. I'm always dribbling some water here and there. And I'm just seeing if I want to add anything. I really like how it's misty back there, so maybe I won't add anything there. I'll just add a little shadows and bold wet rocks in through here. Give that a little more contrast for those rocks up there. Sometimes something will just happen in your painting and you're like, you know what, I like that. It's not exactly what's on my photo, but I like that look and I'm just going to leave it. And you can, because you're a painter. You have an advantage. You don't have to take just what comes your way. Now I'm actually, with my brush, I'm sketching in some of the rocks in the foreground. Because you want that scale, you want some bigger things closer to you and smaller things further away. So I'm just sketching here. And remember, nobody's going to be looking at my photo right next to your painting, so don't you worry about your rock not being just perfect or in the right spot. Look at some of the shapes that your paints have made, and you outline parts here and there, and give yourself some cool rocks down here in the foreground. Now, probably about the last thing I need to do here is some cracks and shadows in these foreground rocks, these granite rocks here. So I'm just going ahead. Lost and found edges, I don't want to have anything too cartoony looking, so you want to be careful about shadow or just outlining, because that can make things look a little cartoony. I like to dry brush across to give it some texture in some places. Just kind of swipe that edge of the brush across so it catches the roughness of the paper. It was such a cloudy, overcast day that you don't have a really strong light source anywhere. And I think what I'm going to do is let this dry and then kind of give you a look at it when it's all dried out, so you can really see the colors and the values, and not see darker areas because it's still wet. Okay, this is dry, and I was looking at it because I'm thinking there's a couple adjustments that I want to make. One is I want more moss on the rocks here, and also what I did was I cleaned my brush off and I kind of wiped off the colors that I'd been using and just put that paint on my palette so that I could use it in the final stage of this painting and it wouldn't go to waste and I wouldn't have to go and clean that off after. So I'm going in, I'm adding some of this green gold in here to represent the moss that is on these rocks. Moss or algae, not moss, it wouldn't be moss, it'd be seaweed or algae. I'm getting that in there. I feel like even though I really love the way those rocks look, they're too bright for that portion of the picture, so I'm just grabbing some gray color off my palette, basically just mixing colors together till I get a gray that I like. Pretty light though, and I am going to go and just kind of dull down some areas because there shouldn't be that much contrast back there, and it's not that bright and I don't want it to look fake. So there, just needed to dull that down a little bit, and I needed to increase the contrast here, so I am going to make a nice, really nice dark color for that by mixing up a bunch of the colors here on my palette. And you know your colors are all going to match because you keep using the same ones. So I'm just using the tip of this brush. You can also use the dagger or a liner, whatever you're comfortable with. I just want these to have really sharp, hard shadows because they're closer to your eye and you would see much more detail and that's going to help them, it's going to help pull them forward. And it really embodies the rugged coast that we have here in Maine. Alright, and maybe just a few more dark boulders down here. Give a contrast against that. Those really light rocks. And oh, one other thing I want to do, because I love how misty it looks back there, I think I want to punch up the color in the water up front. So I'm going to go with that Pression blue again, because that's all we used in the water. Kick it back with a little bit of the mud on my palette. And even though this is not in the picture, I want to give it a little more movement, make it look like more watery, I guess. So I'm going in with that. It's also going to make my boulders in the front have a little more contrast. It's funny, as we drove through down East Maine, how in some areas the water looked very green, greeny, turquoisey blue, which is not really what you think of with Maine water, but just like because of what was surrounding it. It could have something to do with the copper in the water, I don't know. But I don't think we have really coppery water. But some waters looked really different than this kind of silvery gray water, which it's just kind of interesting to notice. And a little bit less up here because I want kind of like I want to really push the perspective, make the perspective a little bit, help it out a little bit, force it a little bit, force the perspective in my picture. And I'm just going to smooth a little bit of that out, and let's dry this so you can see it all dried, and we'll be done. So here is the dry picture. There's a couple things I want to just point out. Like here you can see what I told you about the rounded edge of the credit card making the lighter lines because it was scraping paint away. You can see that in those lighter tree trunks. And then when I use the sharp corner that I cut off the credit card and scrape those branches, you can see that the paint sinked down into the damaged paper and gave you those darker lines. You could also do that for scratches and cleaves and the rocks if you wanted to. You know, it's just a different tool you can use, and it's super handy, and it doesn't cost you anything, and it will fit in your paint box, which is really handy. I liked the way the colors kind of bled over here in the trees. I think that was very interesting, and pretty much saw how I painted everything here pretty well. We did it all on camera, so if you have any questions you can go ahead and leave them below. I'm going to show you the first painting I did again because I didn't look at this painting when I was working. I used much more color on this painting. I really pushed the colors in the water a lot more. But, and maybe that's because I started off there on location and there's a lot more colors you can perceive from your eyes than relying on a photograph. And my camera does tend to wash colors out. My cell phone camera tends to wash colors out. So maybe I had I could see more richness of color just because I was there and I could really pick out the underlying colors. But either way, it's a fun painting to do, and I hope you give it a try, and I hope you get a chance to go paint in your environment as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see any other paintings done from photos I took on this trip, let me know in the comments below. And if people are interested, I will do some more. Please give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you're new here. And if you found this helpful, please share it with a friend. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting and painting too.